I have with me today Dr. Christian Felter, who is in Sydney, Australia. How are you today? Welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm doing very well today. It's a bright sunny morning here in Sydney.
Wonderful. How have you and your family been, and have you been directly affected by this virus?
Well, I live down here with my wife and two children, and I'm happy to say the only effect that we've really had is we have a great deal more quality time to spend together these days, uh, especially considering we're just coming out of the school holidays, where we of course didn't go anywhere. But aside from that, luckily we haven't been directly infected. We don't affected. We don't know anyone who's been infected. In fact, as you probably know, the COVID cases here in Australia have dropped down to a small trickle, and it never really ran rampant throughout the country, which we're very fortunate. A lot of people have really been doing their part to stay indoors and do what they need to do to get through these things. So we're doing well, learning to do many different things, and I think I'm seeing more dogs and more neighbors walking outside than I ever have before.
Very good. Australia is a pretty large country. Some areas are more populated than others. Did you notice whether uh, COVID was more prevalent in the populated regions, and how has the virus affected both Australia and New Zealand? Because I know you're kind of sister countries.
Hmm. Yes. Australia is, a country of less than 25 million people in a country that larger than the size of the continental United States, and most of the population is centered around a couple of large places. For instance, Sydney and Melbourne are each 4 million, so you can see that goes up very quickly, and that's exactly where we've seen most of the COVID cases in the large cities. In fact, almost half of the cases have happened here in New South Wales. That's the state that Sydney is in, and then most of the rest in the other two large states of Victoria and Queensland. So we're seeing it really where the population centers are.
And when did you see your first cases of COVID down there?
The first case, I believe, was right at the end of February, around the 24th of February, and there was very sporadic cases at that point, and it wasn't until we got into about the middle of March when it started to peak up and go up as high as it did. And I think at peak, it was hitting about 450 cases a day across the country. But as I said, that's come way down, and at this point, I do believe in the last 24 hours there were maybe 14.
Wow. And and obviously you said that you're staying at home, spending quality time with your family, which is great. Bad news is you weren't able to go on vacation, but
Mhm.
have there been any measures put in place to mitigate the virus in Australia other than staying at home?
Well, obviously, it's been mainly the physical distancing from that standpoint. They've also made testing very widely available. So, meaning that if you go on to the Department of Health, either for the federal government or the state government departments of health, they can tell you exactly where you need to go. If you do feel unwell, you can go get tested and the like. And they've just been having, as with many countries, regular communications. You can go on the Department of Health website, see all the things that are going on. But the main thing that they put in place is the physical distancing as well as the travel restrictions, even within states. So if you tried to go in between the different states, you would have to be put in quarantine for up to 14 days just to go interstate. So there have been travel restrictions from that standpoint, and in some places that were more densely affected when Victoria was hitting it, they were keeping people within their individual suburbs, so within their towns and the like, and that was being enforced. So it was all about the enforcement of the physical distancing.
And so you think physical distancing definitely helped in this particular um, country and situation because you have such few cases. You just said you had 14 in the last
Hmm.
24 hours. That's amazing.
Correct. So I know it's going to be difficult to get from 14 to 0 at this point. But yeah, the physical distancing measures as well as the contact tracing that has been done. I'll let you know early on in the outbreak here in Australia, you could go on to the Department of Health website and it would even tell you air, flights that people that were infected were on and what rows should be taking a look at. So if you happen to be on that flight, if you're in that row, you should go get yourself tested. So it was really about that sort of communication and just enforcing of the physical distancing. And we've seen the cases come right down. And I guess that's a good positive reinforcement. Although I would say that when we see the cases that low, then people are starting to get itchy to get outside again.
Yeah, of course. So what you're just about to enter your winter season, right?
Correct.
And is there any concerns that, A, it'll come back, and B, that there might be an issue with the flu and the coronavirus? What's the thinking about that?
Well, the public health services have been very clear about the risk of the double whammy, as they call it, of having COVID and influenza at the same time. So influenza vaccination has gone quite well. As you probably know, the vaccine coverage rate for influenza here in Australia is already quite high, especially in the most vulnerable populations. But the government's doing everything they can to push it out. It's speaking to manufacturers to try to make sure as many vaccines are available as possible. So they're definitely looking at those kind of things. Although we will say that even the interseasonal influenza cases sort of dropped off a cliff when we went into such a physical distancing mode. So there is an ongoing concern, of course, that if we go back to a normal life, that will start coming. But we'll definitely take a look. As for a second wave of COVID, I think that's why the government has been quite clear about the fact that even if we start getting back to something that approaches normal life, the international travel and the like is going to be severely restricted for the risk of really seeding COVID back into the population, because we definitely have nowhere close to herd immunity type levels. There have been less than 7,000 cases in the entire country, which means all it would take is a couple of cases coming back in to start this all over again. So I think that we know that even though we might be allowed to go outside, those trips to Asia and everything like that are going to have to wait.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Christian. It was so great to see you again. I hope that we keep in touch. And thank you for your time and sharing your experience over in Australia. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.